Welcome to True Crime with Strategic Eyes.
Strategic back again. What's going on, guys? Happy Sunday, man. I appreciate you guys for joining me today. I can't wait to have this discussion that we're going to have this today, reacting to the final part of this motions hearing that happened with Stephan Stearns a couple days ago. You guys know we don't break news, so we get to this when we get to it. But there's a reason why I have this tinfoil hat on. I'm going to be at some point changing from the tinfoil hat to our court hat, right? Our wig, because we're in court. But I want to talk about something real quick. And I want to be a little serious, but the tinfoil hat is very appropriate for the conversation we're about to have, right? So, number one, I want to say there's no shade, okay? There's no shade, there's no disrespect, there's no drama, right? But I was minding my business on these YouTube streets like I usually do. You guys know I stay in my corner of the internet, right? I really don't want to interact that much with other creators. I kind of just want to do my own thing, build my platform out, give you guys everything that I have to offer. And people started hitting me up. Like they'd say, hey, Strategic, we see another creator doing some of the things that you're doing. Why are you copying off of him, right? I'm like, ooh, huh? Copying? Because I don't copy off of people. This is who I am. Like, what I bring to the table, this is from my soul. This is you guys literally knowing me the way I really am. When I started off in true crime, when I switched over to true crime, started off with true crime, look at my first few videos. It's very serious. That's not who I was. I thought, I'm coming to talk about true crime, so I got to be very serious. I got to put my most stoic detective face on. And then after a while, I was like, dude, this is not who you are. You're a fun guy. You like to crack jokes. I make victims laugh. There's been so many times that victim advocates have pulled me to the side and they said, wow, man, I don't know how you do it. Like how you can talk about these serious topics and get the information from them, but at the end of the interview, leave somebody who just experienced so much trauma with a smile on their face. I'm not saying they're dying like, of course not. They just got victimized and traumatized, but at least smile, at least say a little jab to make them smile a little bit. And that's just who I am. That's my superpower, right? I think I'm corny, but I like my corniness and I laugh at my own corniness. So when you see me laugh at my own jokes, I really mean it. I think I'm funny, even though I know I'm corny at the same time. But to say, oh, you copied off somebody, that really hurt my feelings. So then some people started sending me links and I started watching some of the bits that this person was doing. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit, only because I know that everything I do is from my heart. And, if you're going to imitate or something, you should always show love like I do on my channel. So I just want to say this. I'm not ever going to address this again, but this is for all the people who don't know Strategic, who aren't willing to do the basic amount of detective work and check the timestamps on videos. So you can see, well, this person did this and I saw this on True Crime Strategic. Well, what's the date of the video that this person posted? And what's the date of the video that True Crime Strategic posted? And then I'll have your answer right there. So few things. Number one, this judge wig that maybe or maybe not you've seen somewhere else, I don't know, no beef, no shade. This YouTube is big enough for all of us, right? I didn't go buy this because I wanted a prop. I did not go on Amazon and purchase this because I wanted a prop so I could be funny to you guys. For those of you who watch the show, you know that it was my birthday and my daughter, my youngest daughter, bought me this because she thought it'd be funny because I have a gavel that's inscribed True Crime with Strategic. I did not buy this because I wanted a prop. I was doing a show and I started banging the table because I was pissed off and I was like, I need a gavel. And one of you guys, my viewers, said, emailed me and said, Strategic, I'm going to buy you a gavel. I don't care what you say. I'm going to buy it for you. And I see there's a P.O. box in your description box. I'm going to buy them, mail it there. I was like, oh, you don't got to do that. They said, I don't care. I want to do it. And guess what? They emailed me a couple days later with a tracking number from Amazon, and they said, it's coming to you. And I picked it up from the post office, and it was so kind of them. It says True Crime with Strategic. It's actually got my name in there. I didn't buy this to just be funny. It just happened, right? So now I got the gavel, and I'm using it. Bang, 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 bang. My daughter I don't really like her watching my show, but she's 13 and, come on, she's getting a big girl. Sometimes she'll watch it and she loves the show and she loves when we use the gavel. So she said, a good birthday gift for daddy would be to get him the judge's wig. So then we use it because we think it's funny and my daughter bought it for me. All right. I'm watching Stephan Stearns and I'm seeing how much he loves his Barrel Root Beer candy. So I bought Barrel Root Beer candy because I thought that'd be funny to tease Stephan Stearns. Now, if another creator wants to go buy Barrel Root Beer candy, who cares? It's on Amazon. Somebody made a funny comment in the comment section, and guess what I did? I said, eating the root beer candy. Well, somebody sent me a link to a creator after I did that who did the same thing. It's all good. It's flattery. It's cool. But when you got a much larger channel and you got a channel that's small and growing, let's collaborate. I probably wouldn't collaborate because I don't collaborate anymore like that. I'm very selective on who I collaborate, but reach out, show some love. Don't just Grand Theft Auto. But it's all good, man. So we'll leave it there. I will just end it by saying this: you have the timestamps. Don't come on my channel saying, "Hey, Strategic, why are you doing what this guy's doing?" Just because maybe they got a bigger channel. No. Check the timestamps and make the decision for yourself with the information, with the facts, all right? It's what we do in True Crime. We do facts. So now I'm going to take the tinfoil hat off because there's some conspiracies going on here. You're making it when people's kind of like, imitating. And we'll take the tinfoil hat. And I got to upgrade that tinfoil hat, by the way. And now we're going to put the judges' wigs on. Yeah, because we're in court, okay? We're in court, all right? And now we're going to be finishing. That's kind of why you haven't seen me play with the root beer candy lately, because I'm like, oh, man, I was kind of disgusted. Like, man, that ain't funny no more. But anyway, we're going to continue where we left off. We're going to finish this. I think it's like 30 minutes left. And then we're going to talk about what the thumbnail shows after that. Do you guys notice that Stephan Stearns actually foreshadowed his destiny, his future? I mean, look at the thumbnail. Look at the thumbnail and look at Stephan Stearns now. He foreshadowed himself. He literally wrote his own evil, diabolical novel from beginning to end. So we're going to talk about that in the end, but we got to finish this, guys. So let me go ahead and, first of all, big shout out to everybody who's joining me today. We have almost 200 people and we just started, man. That's awesome. So make sure that you guys hit that like button, show love to the channel, hit the like button. And wow, you guys are amazing. I really appreciate all the love. And who would have thought that we'd be growing as steadily as we grow now and building out such a beautiful community with such awesome people, man. So I'm happy and I'm happy I have a platform that I could be me. I could be silly, but also serious. And I can most importantly share with you guys probative information. Like soon people will find out what we're doing here. It takes time. All right. You have to be patient. You can't just want the whole world to be given to you tomorrow. Everything takes time. A neurosurgeon has to take their time going through school and putting in the hard work to learn their craft and then experiencing doing neurosurgery to become good at what they do. A detective, it takes a long time. It's supposed to take a long time being a police officer, learning how these streets work, learning how to communicate with people, and then becoming a detective and learning through each case how to investigate cases so that you can end up being a very formidable adversary to criminals, right? Everything takes time. Our true crime journey will take time and we'll get there eventually. But eventually people will realize what we're bringing to this platform, which is true experience and true knowledge about how these cases work. Eventually people will find us. And I got to tell you, it's at that point that we're really going to make an impact and a change on people's lives, because there's going to be somebody watching one of these shows who's the next Maddie, the next Naziah, and they're going to say, I see myself. I hear what Strategic is saying. I hear the advice he's giving. I hear what the warriors and the survivors are saying on Strategic show inside his chat, because our chat is very therapeutic. People are in that chat giving knowledge, giving experience, giving testimony. They're going to be a part of this community. They're going to hear what we have to say, all of us, not just me, but us as a community, and it might save a life. I'm telling you, people, it might save a life. So I'm looking forward to being a part of that journey, be a part of some of you guys' journey, and I'm patient. We're going to get there when we get there, right? We're going to get there right. All right. So now, that being said, Jamie MP with a 1 gift membership. Thank you so much, Jamie. Whoever got that gift membership, Deb H got it. Make sure you thank Jamie and show her the love she deserves. All right, let's keep going. I feel like saying let's get ready to rumble. Okay, all right. Somebody got to get me that. I need the let's get ready to rumble sound effect, okay? Let's get ready to rumble.
Does that make sense?
Does it make sense? I don't know. Because when people were sending me that link, talking about, yo, you doing the things this guy is doing. You know, I was like, oh, hell no. Strategic don't steal. Strategic don't steal. Okay, let's keep going.
As to the motion to suppress the unlawful search of the cell phone, again, the burden is flipped to the state. They have the burden of proof to show some kind of exception to the warrant search of the phone. There was no warrant ever obtained for the actual search of the phone, be it the searches done by Detective Tagler on scene, nor the actual cell phone forensic download. Now, as to the first request by Detective Tagler on scene as to the maps, the statements from Detective Tagler was, do you mind if I look at your maps real quick? At that point, the defendant, Mr. Stearns, had indicated, yeah, that's fine. When we look to consent, scope of consent is in a sense.
I want to go back just a tad bit so I can get some context. I mean, he's going into some real good stuff. So big shout out to CR, 6 months, celebrating 6 months as a member. And I just shaved my head, guys, so I am going to take the wig off. All right, I know we're in court, and when we're in court, we tend to wear the wig, but my head is itching me like crazy because I just shaved my head. I like to get it nice and shiny. I'm one of those people. Every day I got to give it a nice little run through. So it's a little irritating, so I'm going to take it off. You guys understand? People get mad, like, don't take it off, Strategic. Don't take it off. I feel like those memes where like the woman is talking to the guy and then the guy yanks her wig off. She's bald or something, whatever. I watch too much YouTube. Too much Instagram too. All right, so I want to go back just a tad bit. I just want some context. All right, context is everything. All right, let's do it.
They have the burden of proof to show
a little bit more.
Moving on to the
let's do it.
Motion, if your Honor's ready.
This is good.
Johnson, I'm ready. Yes, sir. As to the motion to suppress the unlawful search of the cell phone, again, the burden is flipped to the state. They have the burden of proof to show some kind of exception to the warrant search of this phone. There was no warrant ever obtained for the actual search of the phone, be it the searches done by Detective Tagler on scene, nor the actual cell phone forensic download. Now, as to the first request by Detective Tagler on scene as to the maps, the statements from Detective Tagler was, do you mind if I look at your maps real quick? At that point, the defendant, Mr. Stearns, had indicated, yeah, that's fine. When we look to consent.
How you guys like the lighting? I'm sorry. They're like, what are you doing, Strategic? We're listening to this. Just curious. We're trying to make the show perfect. So if you like the lighting, let me know. All right. Last time I'm going to pull it back. I was just adjusting things. I was being a douchebag. Let's listen to this.
Search of this phone. There was no warrant ever obtained for the actual search of the phone, be it the searches done by Detective Tagler on scene, nor the actual cell phone forensic download. Now, as to the first request by Detective Tagler on scene as to the maps, the statements from Detective Tagler was, do you mind if I look at your maps real quick? At that point, the defendant, Mr. Stearns, had indicated, yeah, that's fine. When we look to consent, scope of consent is an essential element when looking to the validity of law enforcement's actions. At this point, there was limited consent to look only to the maps application only, not consent to search the entire phone. As to the second request, as to when Detective Tagler asked, do you mind if I just take a picture of your history? And Mr. Stearns replied, yeah, that's fine. Again, this was limited only to taking a photograph of what was already visible on screen, not consent to navigate through the rest of the phone, through additional screens, not consent to access other applications. To the third request from Detective Tagler, if I can go into your settings real quick. I just want to see if you're logged onto your Google. Again, at this point, after pressing Mr. Stearns agrees, but again, this is, limited consent as to merely looking at the settings screen to determine if he's logged into Google. At no point did any of the detectives or any member of law enforcement seek consent from Mr. Stearns to go through the rest of his cell phone, which then we can see Detective Tagler's overstepping the scope of consent when she later indicates, I was checking your call history, I noticed that you don't have anything before this morning, but when questioned, and as evidenced in the recordings that Your Honor has, there was never any consent sought or given as to checking the search of the call history in this case. So that is completely outside the scope of the searching of the maps, the history photo, or the Google login check. Additionally,
all right, so guys, I hope you're paying attention to this because he's really laying out, and this is just the defense's side. Of course, the state is going to end up doing a rebuttal to this. So he's putting their position. Don't take it as sacrosanct, okay? That's their position. But he is laying out the differentiation between what Tagler had permission to search and what she did not, right? And I think this is very probative. So let's keep going.
When we're looking to consent as to Detective Tagler's request to do an entire forensic download of the phone, this is where defense relies on the Ramirez factors. When looking to the Ramirez factors, the defense looks to Mr. Stearns' freedom to leave. While the state is going to argue that he was free to leave, and the detectives stated that he was free to leave, no statement was ever made to Mr. Stearns that he was able to leave the scene at any time. Instead, what happened is that...
Is that required, or is that a factor to be considered?
It's a factor to be considered. And when considering that factor, we're also looking to what a reasonable person would feel in that situation.
Right. I want to go back and just digest that. You guys understand, I'm doing so much over here to keep this show going. So I think what he said was a pivotal moment when the judge asked him to clarify. I want to definitely get that like really deep, just digest it. I want to digest that so I can give you guys good commentary. So let's go back to 29 because I want to see him segue into that.
And as evidenced in the recordings that Your Honor has, there was never any consent sought or given as to checking the search of the call history in this case. So that is completely outside the scope of the searching of the maps, the history photo, or the Google login check. Additionally, when we're looking to consent as to Detective Tagler's request to do an entire forensic download of the phone, this is where defense relies on the Ramirez factors. When looking to the Ramirez factors, the defense looks to Mr. Stearns' freedom to leave. While the state is going to argue that he was free to leave, and the detectives stated that he was free to leave, no statement was ever made to Mr. Stearns that he was able to leave the scene at any time.
Right. And it's best practices. I know some of you guys don't like when I say that, but it's best practices to let a person know that they're free to leave. Like the law wants you to explain people's rights very rudimentary, right? That's why you have to read people their rights before you interrogate them, right? If they're in custody and they can't leave, you got to read a Miranda before you talk to them, right? So it's not assumed that you know your Miranda rights. Even though it's all over the TV, all that stuff, as law enforcement, we still have to remind you, right? So technically, the best practice would have been to let him know, hey, you can't go into the house, you can't go into your car, but you're definitely free to go. You're not being detained. If they would have just said that, once again, this defense would not be able to use this argument against them, because another thing that they're trying to harp upon is that Stephan Stearns may not have believed that he was actually free to go. He may have believed that he was detained. And if that's the case, then that further brings more issues to the seizure of the phone, because if you don't believe that you're free to go, then you can't really make a conscious decision as to whether you should give permission or not to search your phone. Now, we have 341 people watching the stream right now, which is a lot of people, man. Shoot, I'd say it's a lot of people if it was just 30, okay? Can you please hit that like button and support the channel? We also have 2 new members, so those 2 new members, we appreciate you. Thank you. But please hit that like button, support the channel so we can get into the algorithm and get exposed to a wider audience. Let's keep going.
Instead, what happened is that
Is that required or is that a factor to be considered?
it's a factor to be considered.
And somebody said ignorance of the law is no excuse. You're absolutely 1,000% wrong, Miss T Tree. You know I love you, so I'm not picking on you. You know, anybody who says anything in the comment section, you are subject to strategic talking about it. Some people don't like when I do that. I don't think Miss Tree has an issue. She's very mature. That is absolutely wrong. Ignorance of the law in certain instances is no excuse, but you have to know your rights, right? I can't just say, oh, you should know your rights, so I'm going to interrogate you now without telling you that you are entitled to an attorney and you have a right to remain silent. So yes, ignorance of the law if you murder somebody is no excuse. Like that's a natural law. You should know that you shouldn't murder people. But there are other aspects of the law that you are not entitled to know and that law enforcement is entitled and is mandated to inform you about. And if they don't, it could possibly result in you walking away from a murder trial uncharged or with a dismissed charge or a not guilty charge, or walking away from a CSAM trial without being charged or with a dismissed charge or a not guilty charge. So that is not an absolute, what you said. It absolutely isn't. Let's keep going. Thank you for making that comment. And she said, my bad, Mr. S. Don't say my bad. Like, come on. We're over here. We're family. We're talking. What you just said, educated. Your statement allowed me to educate people on how the system really works. You don't have to apologize. We appreciate feedback here. Some of you guys act like these other creators be beating you up or something. You got a DV relationship with these other creators. This is not how we do on True Crime and Strategic. We love our audience, we respect you, and we appreciate when you add to the show. Let's keep going.
Considering that factor, we're also looking to what a reasonable person would feel in that situation. So at this point, Mr. Stearns is being corralled by 2 detectives by a vehicle. He's not allowed to go back inside of his home. He's not allowed to go inside of his own car. When it comes to the apartment complex, there's law enforcement all around. There's law enforcement at the entrance regulating who's coming and going outside of the apartment complex. It's clear that law enforcement essentially has the scene locked down. And not only do they have the scene locked down, while the state asked whether anybody had drawn firearms or anything of that nature, it was clear from everybody that testified that firearms were readily apparent, visible on scene, which would lead to Mr. Stearns feeling that he was not free to leave. When we're looking to any potential course,
I mean, he has to make this argument. This is a very weak argument that, hey, they had firearms on them. Police always have firearms on them. So, but of course, he's going to make this argument because he's trying to paint the picture. And even though this is a very small piece of the picture, that when he's hoping that in the totality of the picture that he paints, that the judge is going to agree with his motion. But this is, they always say this crap, and that's just bull crap. All right. Police always have guns. And if you're not guilty, you don't feel intimidated unless, of course, the officer is doing something to make you feel intimidated. Okay. I go into stores, I go into establishments, eateries, whatever, daycares with my gun exposed, and the kids don't be afraid. The teachers aren't afraid. Nobody's afraid because our society has brainwashed us. We're not even brainwashed, but how should I say? Indoctrinated us that when you see a badge next to a gun, then that is supposed to equal safety. Now, we know we make mistakes as law enforcement, but for the millions of interactions that police officers have every single year with citizenry, the gun and the badge usually means safety, right? So if you're not a bad guy like Stearns and you're not doing horrible things like Stearns, seeing a bunch of cops around you with guns is not going to make you feel unsafe, okay? But of course, he's going to try and make this point because he's trying to get Stearns' phone that led us to the most diabolical find of 2024. He wants to get that thrown out. So he's making that weak argument, but let's keep going.
Police procedures, again, we have a situation where Detective Tagler systematically keeps pushing boundaries of searching Mr. Stearns' phone. First, it's just a check for, hey, can I check the application? Then I want to take a picture of the phone. Then we're going to keep pushing into the settings. And then the detectives push more and more to the point where they start checking other parts of his phone without asking him for his consent. So at this point, a reasonable person would believe that, well, law enforcement has my phone in their possession. Law enforcement's going to keep looking through the phone. And while the argument is that he stood there and never said no, it's not the onus. The onus is not on Mr. Stearns to say no. The onus is on law enforcement to ask if they can continue to go through this because the scope of consent is limited.
Right.
And while the
Yes, and people need to understand that. And that's what I've been trying to explain to you guys. You just don't get blanket anything. He had specific places that he gave permission for them to search. They had a scope of their search, and she exceeded the scope long before she asked if she could dump his entire phone. She had exceeded the scopes of the search that he had given her. Big shout out to somebody here from St. Croix, Martita Chardon from St. Croix, man. You guys know I'm from the U.S. Virgin Islands, from St. Thomas, and that's our sister island right there. So big shout out to you. You know what I mean? Showing love from a fellow, well, you're not a St. Thomian, but but a fellow Virgin Islander. All right. Big shout out to you. Appreciate you for coming through, showing love.
detectives and the state want to argue that, well, he stood right there and never said no, Your Honor. Some 200 years ago, our forefathers said no for him. That said that we have a situation where there's no warrant. Law enforcement has seized his phone. They're searching his phone. The Fourth Amendment says that you cannot do that. The no has already been said for him. When we're looking to the ability to refuse consent, additionally, law enforcement never told him that he could refuse to allow them to look through his phone.
And this is another thing I told you guys long time ago. We've been talking about this stuff for months. Anybody who's following, the people who've been following me for a long time, they're all in the chat like, yep, you said so, strategic. Yep. I was looking at the last few lives. All I've seen is, 2, 3, 4 people. It's not a crazy amount, but the people who remember, they're like, yo, strategic, you said this 2 months ago. You said this a week ago. You've been saying this for a long time. It's not because I'm a psychic or I'm the smartest guy in the room. I'm a dumb cop. I tell you guys all the time, I'm just a dumb cop, okay? You got to be dumb to put a gun on your hip and run after crackheads with guns. You got to be a little bit insane to do that kind of stuff. It's because of experience. That's it. I could be the dumbest guy on the planet. If you do something enough, repetition, you're going to become an expert at it. I've seen this a million times. I've been in map hearings. This is what it is. This is a map hearing. Nobody's even using a legal term. This is a map hearing. All right. I've been in map hearings 1,001 times. Okay. I've been cross-examined like Acosta and Hunt and all of these folks 1,000 times. Well, why did you do this, strategic? And why did you do that, strategic? And why didn't you do this, strategic? And why did you fart, strategic? I've 1,000 times. So the repetition lets you know how these things work. And that's why I spoke so much about best practices. You have to tell the person that they can refuse. And I said it 1,000 times. I told you guys that, and people told me that's ridiculous, strategic, that you have to say, are you sure you want to let me use your phone? Do you know that you could rescind consent at any time? Because that's best practices. My department says, say that stupid spiel so that we don't have to deal with this later. Now, their department in Orange County, who don't know how to treat victims, because we watched a video how they just obliterated a little girl who was being victimized by her dad. They did not believe her, who ran away to her boyfriend's house. They didn't believe her in Orange County. This was just a couple months ago, too. That was a 2024 or 2025 body-worn cam video. They allowed her to tell her story of abuse in front of her abuser, and then allowed her abuser to refute her stories in front of her. And then they would go over to their car to confer while leaving the victim with their abuser. And then when the neighbor comes up and says, yo, you guys are really leaving this girl with her abuser? You're not even going to separate them? They told her, don't tell us how to do our job, because Orange County sheriffs are the most highest trained and paid and most exclusive elite law enforcement office in the world. And we know how to do policing better than anybody else. So don't tell us how to do our job. I added all that extra stuff. But all he said was, do I come to your job and tell you to do your job, ma'am? She's like, no. Then he's like, well, don't come to me and tell me how to do my job. That's what that cop told her. That sheriff told her. I'm not a sheriff. I'm a freaking cop. I think there's a difference. I just don't feel like sheriffs are as trained as police officers. Maybe that's my bias. There'll be a tons of sheriffs in the room like, you know what you're talking about, strategic? That's just how I feel. All right? That sheriff told her to mind her business. Meanwhile, he left a victim right next to her victimizer. The only time that the Orange County Sheriff's Department arrested that guy during that body-worn camera is when he spit on a cop. When he disrespected one of their own, oh, they took him down to the ground with the quickness, had knees on his neck, knees on his back, knees on his legs. They took him down exactly the way he needed to be taken down, viciously. But they didn't take him down viciously because he was assaulting that little girl. They took him down because he disrespected one of their own. That's the Orange County Sheriff's Department. I'm sorry I went on that tangent, but I don't like the way they do business down there. That being said, back on what I was saying, it's experience. It's experience. You have to say these things, even if they sound ridiculous, so that you don't find yourself in a map hearing like this, where a judge is seriously considering what they're saying. If you can't look at that judge and see that judge is not seriously considering this motion, then you don't know nothing about law enforcement. You don't know nothing about court in these proceedings. I've sat next to a judge 1,000 times, listening to him watch me get examined and cross-examined. And I've watched and I've looked up and see the judge totally disinterested, like, yeah, we just going through the motions. This is going to be denied. When I look at that judge, I look at a guy like who's saying, okay. I see the prosecutor saying they didn't meet their burden. There's nothing to see here. And I see the judge like, nope, you need to defend this. Did you not see that last night? When the prosecution's like, yo, we don't think they made their burden. The prosecutor's not even trying. They're like, yeah, whatever. Like, they're going through the motions. They're like, we know this is going to be kept. You should never have that attitude. You should fight for every single inch that you get. We don't see the prosecution doing that. They're very lackluster on that side, and these guys are very diligent on this side. And I see a judge that's like, yeah, I'm listening. Now, will he grant their motion? I do not believe that he will throw that cell phone evidence out, but he's listening, and that's a problem. So let's keep going.
As to the education and intelligence, when it comes to law enforcement's testimony, they knew that Mr. Stearns was currently in a state of, or this actually goes more towards physical and mental state, that Mr. Stearns was currently in a distraught, stressed out state. They were aware that he was taking medication to try and fall asleep, to take care of himself during these long hours during the course of this investigation. When we're looking to the actual physical state of Mr. Stearns, we know it's about 50 to 60 degrees outside. We know it's night. We know the sun has gone down. We know law enforcement's with him. We know that he's in flip-flops and khaki pants, and he's not allowed to go back inside his house nor his car. So physical discomfort may have affected his decision-making process. When we look to the standards here again, it's not what law enforcement believes that Mr. Stearns was. It's what would the typical reasonable person have understood what the situation was. And in this case, Your Honor, the defense would argue that as Detective Tagler consistently pushed the bounce, then held onto his phone, just unilaterally.
Hold on. Aki said I missed something about the flip-flops and the khakis. I heard it, but I didn't digest it. So I'm going to bring it back just a little bit because she's saying like he's kind of trying to blame that. So, you know, Aki's good at catching this stuff. We're going to go back and we're going to see if, let's see what they said about those flip-flops. My apologies.
And the state want to argue that, well, he stood right there and never said no, Your Honor. Some 200 years ago, our forefathers said no for him. That said that we have a situation where there's no warrant. Law enforcement has seized his phone. They're searching his phone. The Fourth Amendment says that you cannot do that. The no has already been said for him. When we're looking to the ability to refuse consent, additionally, law enforcement never told him that he could refuse to allow them to look through his phone. As to the education and intelligence, when it comes to law enforcement's testimony, they knew that Mr. Stearns was currently in a state of, or this actually goes more towards physical and mental state, that Mr. Stearns was currently in a distraught, stressed out state. They were aware that he was taking medication to try and fall asleep, to take care of himself during these long hours during the course of this investigation. When we're looking to the actual physical state of Mr. Stearns, we know it's about 50 to 60 degrees outside. We know it's night. We know the sun has gone down. We know law enforcement's with him. We know that he's in flip-flops and khaki pants, and he's not allowed to go back inside his house nor his car.
So a lot of you guys, this is actually a good point. Good job, Aki. A lot of you guys are, maybe you don't care, but it does matter. A person's mental and physical state when they're making these pivotal decisions. Remember, this decision is a capital punishment decision. The decision that Stephan Stearns made to give up his phone and allow it to be searched is going to result if he gets ended by the state, if he loses his life by our hands, the taxpayers' hands. Whenever we end somebody through capital punishment, it's all of us collectively as American citizens doing that. We've taken his life. So it does matter your mental and your physical state. Now, do I think that that stuff impacted his ability to make the decision? No, I'm not on his side. Not at all. I think he knew exactly what he was doing, just like he knew what he was doing when he was hurting Maddie. But it does matter. And I think it's a good point. It's a good point for him to bring up as Stephan Stearns' attorney. And you guys know I like to go on my tangents. I'm not going to go on a tangent. I just want to say 2 sentences. Somebody in the chat said we need a Grady judge in every county in Florida. I disagree. I used to be a very big fan of Grady Judge, and I still think that Grady Judge does an amazing job down there in Florida. But I did cover a story, and I would encourage everybody to go and find that story inside of my my catalog, where Grady Judge failed a victim, where a young woman was being abused, the full enchilada, by her uncle. And she came forward, and Grady Judge's ex-crimes team, his ex-crimes unit, made her plead guilty to lying on the uncle. Charged her. She was a teenager. Charged her for lying in court. Did not believe her. We played her interrogation where she's like, you really want to say this? Because if you say this again and send you back to a group home, this is what the detective was telling his victim. After she pled guilty and was charged as a criminal for lying on her uncle, she then had to record. She downloaded, he continued to abuse her. She downloaded a special app on her phone. And when he took her on one of those long drives so he could drive into the bushes and do his wares to her, his evil wares, she activated the app and created her own CSAM to prove that he was doing this to a 3-year-old girl. Only then, when she went back to Grady Judge X-Crimes team and showed them CSAM that she created to prove that she was actually a victim, did they now send that man to jail and now he's doing like 30 years in prison, 30 or 40 years in prison, and they had to wipe her record and unguilty her, exonerate her. But you know what she didn't get with her exoneration and with the guilty plea? And they had to reassign the case to a new detective. Mind you, the lady who coerced her and badgered her and forced her to make a confession that was not true is still working for that sheriff's department, is still a detective, and is still in the X-Crimes unit. But you know what she didn't get with her exoneration and her guilty verdict on her uncle, who's now doing effectively a life sentence in prison? She didn't get an apology from Sheriff Grady Judd. She also didn't file a lawsuit. I don't know why she didn't do that, but she chose not to file a lawsuit. That's her business. And thirdly, no policies and procedures were changed to make sure that that never happened again to another victim by Grady Judge. And lastly, nothing happened to the detective that was on audio recording badgering a victim and telling a victim that if she does not change her story, she's going to be put in a group home where she could really be abused, and then forcing that victim to plead guilty to a crime. So that is your hero, Sheriff Grady Judd. I don't idolize people. Don't idolize me. I'm not a perfect human being. Don't idolize nobody else out there. Do your research. Everybody's flawed. Everybody. Let's keep going.
So physical discomfort may have affected his decision-making process. When we look to the standards here again, it's not what law enforcement believes that Mr. Stearns was. It's what would the typical reasonable person have understood what the situation was. And in this case, Your Honor, the defense would argue that as Detective Tagler consistently pushed the bounce, then held onto his phone, just unilaterally seizing it, dismissing his concerns about trying to contact his family, comes back hours later and gives him the Hobson's choice, that ultimatum of, you can either consent or we can get a warrant. At that point, Mr. Stearns' ability to consent has been tainted, it's been coerced, and for that reason we would argue that all of the searches of the phone violate the Fourth and Article 1 section.
Thank you.
It's a really good argument that he just made. I'm not saying it's a winning argument, but it's a good argument. Let's keep going.
Your Honor, the defense is not arguing that the...
All right, and I just want to give you guys a definition of the Hobson's choice, because they've been using that for a while, and some of you guys may not know what that is. A Hobson's choice is a choice that you really don't have a choice for. So it's either you do this or something's going to happen that you're not going to like, or that's going to happen anyway, right? So once again, hey, you got to give me permission to take the phone, or I'm going to get a warrant. A warrant means I'm going to take the phone, right? So you're not giving me a choice at all, right? You're saying, give me the phone willingly, or I'm going to take the phone. That's what a warrant is. A warrant is a seizure. You're taking stuff, okay? I had a case where I had a warrant to take all the person's medication. The person had a very debilitating disease, and I took all their medication. I had to, because the DA wanted it, right? Because it helped with their case. So that person was like, well, how am I supposed to take my medicine? And I'm like, yo, you got to go to the pharmacy and get some emergency supply or something. I don't know, because it has to go. That's a Hobson's choice. They didn't have a choice. It's either that wasn't Hobson's choice, because I literally had the search warrant. So it was no choice. But what I'm saying is that a search warrant is a seizure. It's taking it. So in the context of this case, she told Stephan Stearns, either you give me permission or I get a search warrant. So in translation, either you give it to me freely or I'm just going to take it. That's a Hobson's choice. Literally, he had no choice, because regardless of whatever he chose, he was never going to get his phone back, at least in this context. Let's keep going.
The defendant did not consent to law enforcement looking at his phone. Some of the things that I think are important to point out to the court is that the defendant in this case was free to leave. Both law enforcement officers that were interacting with him were in an open parking lot where he was free to move about. He was in and out of Miss Soto's vehicle. There was no testimony before, Your Honor, that there was any threats or prohibiting of his movements. The defense argued that
Hold on. That's my eye doctor verifying my appointment.
Detective Tagler consistently pushed the boundaries. However, Detective Tagler did not push the boundaries of consent in this case. There were multiple things where she was verifying with the defendant his continued consent for her to examine different parts of the phone. The defendant was in possession of his cell phone, unlocked it, and provided it to Detective Tagler. The defendant did not try and retain control over the phone. The defendant did not try and take the phone back from Detective Tagler. The defendant did not try to himself show her various portions of the phone. There was no attempt by the defendant to limit the consent in any way. The scope of the consent is measured by objective reasonableness. What would a reasonable person have understood to be the object of the search during the exchange between that person and law enforcement? You have Detective Tagler, after speaking with the defendant and him being inconsistent about timings and locations, she asks him, do you mind if I look at your maps real quick? The defendant confirms. It's at this point he unlocks his phone and hands it to Detective Tagler. Detective Tagler does not walk away with the defendant's phone. They are standing shoulder to shoulder. The defendant can see everything that Detective Tagler's doing. Detective Tagler then says, do you mind if I just take a picture of your history? To which the defendant responds, that's fine.
I don't agree with that Stearns could see everything that Tagler was doing. I mean, you could be right next to somebody and they could be using a phone. I mean, I think this happens every day, like every single moment of our lives since cell phones and smartphones specifically have been introduced into our lifestyle, right? People from age, I would say the earliest I've seen a child with a cell phone is maybe 7 or 8. From 8 years old all the way up to 100 years old. People are on their phone and you don't know what they're doing. So if Stephan Stearns is being interviewed by Acosta, how is he going to know what Tagler's doing on his phone, even if she's right next to him? I don't know if that really computes, but let's keep going.
There is no attempt to limit the type of history that Detective Tagler is going to look into. There is...
Now, there's another hole in her argument. So if I give you specific permission on what you can search, and once again, I'm talking to another detective who is an authority figure who commands my attention, right? They command my attention because they're law enforcement. How am I supposed to keep tabs of what you're doing to keep rescinding permissions or give you permissions on the search of the phone? So not feeling this argument too much, but let's keep going.
This conversation happens. The detective is looking at the defendant's phone. Subsequently, the detective looks at the defendant's call history. And there's actually a conversation with the defendant about how Detective Tagler doesn't know how to use the defendant's specific phone. She also asked to go in the settings, and in the audio recording, there is actually a substantial pause before she's finds where the settings are. She actually says, I don't know how to use this phone. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, as he's having a conversation with Detective Acosta as well. There is no time during that encounter that the defendant attempts to withdraw his consent or limit his consent in any way. The defendant does receive the cell phone back from Detective Tagler. There is a portion in the interview where she does say, here you go, to which the defendant responds, thanks.
All right, I wanna go back a little bit, just a tad bit, but two things. Number one, I had like one or two people complain via email that I didn't see their messages, which is, it means we do a good job engaging with the channel, that people expect that we do that, which is awesome because we're a community. But I just realized why I probably missed some messages. By default, on this studio that I look at, YouTube Studio, it says top messages. So it's not showing me all messages. It's just showing the messages that Google believes are messages that I should pay attention to. I didn't even notice that. So I just changed it to live chat, and all the messages changed. There's like tons of messages that were not a part of what I was looking at before for all these years. All these years, I've been missing tons of messages because I just had it on top chat and not live chat. The funny thing is that's what is default. So I have to now remember to always change it to live chat and not top chat. So that sucks, man, that I probably missed some really interesting messages. The other thing I wanted to address is, let me see here. So Carolina Hurtado says, I did my research last night, and what I found is that in the state of Florida, a defendant's Fourth Amendment rights are precluded when CSAM is found on his or her phone, no matter how that phone, and then it cuts off. That's not correct. You can't, there's no state that can preclude constitutional rights. It's not, the very premise of that statement is averse to the very foundation of our Constitution and our rights in this country. That's a banana republic if a state can now preclude constitutional rights. So I would definitely implore you to read more into that, because there are going to be also court cases. You can't just read one article. There are court cases that address things. States and the federal government make laws, and then those laws are interpreted and shaped based off of court rulings and the Supreme Court and state Supreme Courts and superior courts and lower court rulings. So that's why when these lawyers make these motions, they have 5, 6, 7 different court cases that they're citing that basically explain and interpret those laws and those rules, those procedures, okay, those court procedures. You can't just read one article and then have it figured out. It doesn't work that way in court, unfortunately. And just the premise of your statement shows that either you interpreted it wrong or you just wrote it wrong. You maybe just used the wrong word when you was trying to express yourself, but that is averse to our Constitution. Nothing precludes your Fourth Amendment right unless you follow the proper procedures, search and seizure procedures that the law has and our Constitution and our courts have laid out, such as warrants, etc., or even given permission, etc. But nothing precludes your constitutional rights. Let's keep going. Let me just bring it back just a little bit. We're at 39:45. I'm not going crazy. I'm just bringing it down to 38 and hear her argument.
Settings, and in the audio recording, there is actually a substantial pause before she's finds where the settings are. She actually says, I don't know how to use this phone. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, as he's having a conversation with Detective Acosta as well. There is no time during that encounter that the defendant attempts to withdraw his consent or limit his consent in any way. The defendant does receive the cell phone back from Detective Tagler. There is a portion in the interview where she does say, "Here you go," to which the defendant responds, "Thanks." It's a little bit further away from the microphone, so it's a little bit harder to hear, but that conversation does take place before she asks the defendant a second time to unlock the phone. So the defendant does regain possession of the phone. Then she asks to unlock the phone a second time after she steps away. The defendant does so. Again, does not limit the consent in any way. There's actually no conversation at that point about what is going to be looked at. And then she brings up the fact that
So this is a really good question by Anita Blackstone. She says, okay, at True Crime Strategic. So say Stephan consented to the taking of the search of his phone. Did Tagler still need to have a warrant before she had the phone in her hands? I'm confused. What I'm trying to say is that best practices is that she would have never asked for consent to search the phone. Best practices is that you knew that he lied about where he was at. You knew that he was untruthful about his geolocation based off of the information you had at hand, that the license plate readers and the highway cam showed that he was in areas that he was not in when that he told you he was at. You knew that he said that he dropped the girl off at the church, and by that time they knew that he didn't drop her off at that church. He's a suspect now. You have probable cause. Those lies gave you probable cause. The fact that he's the last person to be with the girl gave you reasonable suspicion that a crime may have occurred. She didn't need to ask for consent. She should have just take the phone, seize it, and then get a lawful warrant for the phone, a search warrant for the phone. You have every right to seize the phone. Plus, you knew that he deleted his contacts. So once again, he was destroying evidence. You have probable cause because of his lies. You have reasonable suspicion because he's the last person to have been seen with the child. You just simply go and get a warrant. That's it. So that's basically what I'm saying. The other thing is, and I don't know.
Does that make sense?
I'm just curious. Hopefully that makes sense. I had to throw that in there.
Does that make sense?
I hope nobody else on the internet start going, does that make sense? Are you serious? Somebody gonna steal it. I'll watch you. I bet you. But anyway, the other thing I'm saying is, first of all, there's nothing wrong with getting consent. She had every right to get consent, or not every right, but it was part of her toolbox. She could have gotten consent. How she got consent was not clear, because best practices is that if you get the consent, you have to inform the person that they don't have to give you consent, and that at any time they can rescind consent and take their stuff back. So that's the thing with consent. If you allow somebody to give you consent, they could change their mind. But Stephan Stearns could never change his mind because they were never going to give him that phone back. So what is the point in getting consent if you know that you will not allow him to change his mind? So now, lastly, let's say she got consent to take the phone, which she did, right? He said she has permission. All right, that's not in contention. What's in contention is whether he did it of the right sound mind and whether it was done correctly. Whatever. That's what the defense is arguing. Even after you got consent to get the phone, she still could have gotten a warrant, which probably would have solved all of this. So that's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when nobody's saying that Tagler broke a rule or broke a law or violated his rights. That's what the defense is saying. That's not what Strategic is saying.
Sense?
I'm not saying that.
Does that make sense?
All right. What I'm saying is it's not best practices. It's not the way an experienced detective would have gone about seizing evidence for a case that any detective worth their salt would know foul play. Listen, this is what we do for a living. The moment we saw those lies and we knew it was foul play. If you go back to my archives and you saw when I first covered this case in the first few days, I was like, I made a video and I said, I was just insane then because I didn't even know if I was going to do true crime. I was still covering my other things, politics and stuff. And I just covered this because it was interesting. And I said, yo, that girl's gone. She's dead. And people was like, what? That's not cool. She might still be alive out there. Nope. Off my experience, right off the gate, I was like, yo, she's dead. She's gone. That's the same thing those detectives were saying. They knew she was gone. Without a lick of evidence, they knew that once he lied about where he was at, going to the McDonald's and what highway he's on, he said he's on this highway, but the LPR's got him going on that highway 50 miles away. Once he said, oh, I put it inside of the dropped off in the church parking lot. Once they saw the video of him driving, leaving the compound with her slumped over like that, they're like, she's dead. They knew it. They knew it. So no detective worth their salt would get consent for a case you know is going to end up being a homicide, man. You don't get consent for homicides. You get search warrants for homicides because this is what's going to happen. Homicide cases get the best attorneys, whether it's a legal aid attorney or a purchased attorney, a private attorney. The court is going to assign the best attorneys for homicide. So you know you're going to be coming up against a brick wall. You know you're going to be coming up against the best of the best. You're not getting that fresh out of law school guy for that petty larceny case. You're going to get their most experienced and dogged attorneys for capital cases. That's why you know as a detective, you better come correct. So any detective worth their salt would never get consent for a capital case. And don't, once again, pay attention to my words. Don't say, well, at the time, strategic, they didn't know it was a capital case. No, at the time, you didn't know it was a capital case because you're not a detective. These detectives knew they was dealing with a capital case. Just like the moment I covered this Madeline Soto case when she was just a missing girl and I'm watching Stephan Stearns behind Jen Soto like this, I said he killed her. Go back to the show. I said he killed her. Because any detective worth their salt would know she was gone. They knew what they were working with at that very moment. The moment they checked those LPRs and he went left, but he told them he went right. I did that reverse. This is my left and this is my right. Search warrant. Let's keep going.
His call history is not there.
Is this
And
information that she had prior to giving the phone back, correct?
she says, I was checking your call history. I am unclear at what point she looked at it. I believe it's around this encounter, but it could have been before.
This is a really good. I'm sorry I'm stopping this. You know, you guys have seen this 1,000 times. We're analyzing this. We're dissecting this. You know, if I'm watching something for the first time, I'm gonna do very minimal. Like if I'm breaking news, like if I got a FOIA request or something, I'm not putting no commentary on. I'm just gonna let you guys listen to it, like some of these channels do. But the way we do business, we don't break news. So by the time we cover it, it's already been covered 1,000 times. So if you're here for the first time, we do this. We stop every minute and we analyze because you should have watched it already. That's what we assume, that you watched it already. So that being said, a good comment says, Luna111 says the other detective, the man, Acosta maybe, it was Acosta, answered in the right way to explain why they seized the phone. Well, his answers mitigate Tagler's wrong answer. We don't know what we had on our hands. Good question. I don't know. It's up to the judge to determine that. But my mind's eye would tell me no, and I'll tell you why. Because it wasn't Acosta who took the phone. It was Tagler who took the phone. So it's Tagler's mens rea. It's her thought process that matters. And her thought process was she took the phone and she said, well, we didn't really know what we had on our hands at that moment, which is not probable